It's another day and another news story. Welcome to Learn English with News. I'm Ben, your host, and today's news is all about a rugby match in France that got delayed for a bizarre reason. Later, we'll be discussing prepositions of position. This is Learn English with News, a podcast for English learners where we focus on vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and more, all while discussing an interesting news story. Welcome once again to Learn English with News. Before we hear today's news story, let's take a look at the vocabulary. These are key words we'll be using in today's news story, which you might not know. So if you'd like to write these words down, get yourself a piece of paper and a pen if you can. We'll come back to all of these words at the end to look at what they mean and how I use them. So we begin with a noun. Awning. A-W-N-I-N-G. What is an awning? Next, we've got a couple of verbs. To gather, G-A-T-H-E-R, gather, and to cushion, C-U-S-H-I-O-N, cushion. Next, we've got a noun, a cherry picker. It's two words. What is a cherry picker? Next, a phrasal verb, to pick up with something. You'll really need to hear this in the context to have any chance of understanding. To pick up with something. And finally, a phrase, in due course. That's three words. In due, D-U-E, course, C-O-U-R-S-E. In due course. So listen very carefully for those words. See if you can understand them. As I said, we'll come back to all of those words at the end. And as I mentioned earlier, we're also going to be looking at prepositions of position. Words like above, under, below. So listen out for any examples of prepositions of position, as well as the vocabulary. You'll have another opportunity to listen to the news story at the end of the episode. Okay, here is today's news story. The start of the Champions Cup clash between Sale and Toulouse was delayed by 40 minutes after a parachutist became trapped on the stadium roof. Captain Yannick Trouillet was meant to deliver the match ball by parachuting into the Toulouse stadium. However, his descent didn't go as planned. Trouillet's parachute became caught in the stadium's awning, leaving him suspended around 30 metres above the crowd. As a safety precaution, fans sitting directly below the incident were moved. Stadium staff, along with Toulouse's lion mascot, quickly gathered equipment to cushion a potential fall. Post protectors were placed under the trapped parachutist, and a large inflatable children's rugby pitch was brought in to provide extra protection. After a tense 25-minute delay, firefighters used a cherry picker to reach and safely rescue Trouillet. Fortunately, he was unharmed and received a loud round of applause from the crowd once back on the ground. During the incident, the players returned to the dressing rooms. Once the situation was resolved, they came back out and the match finally kicked off. Despite the unusual start, Toulouse maintained focus and went on to secure a convincing 38-15 victory, booking their spot in the quarter-finals. Dominic Mackay, chairman of the European Professional Club Rugby, expressed his gratitude to everyone who helped with the rescue. He said, "We would like to extend our sincere thanks to all involved at the stadium, both clubs, and the emergency services for safely returning the parachutist to the ground." He also emphasised that the safety of both individuals and spectators is always the top priority, adding, "We will pick up with Stade Toulousain and the stadium in due course." And that's today's news story. Okay, so a bad day at work for that parachutist, but a very, very lucky man to escape with no injuries. What a relief that must have been for everyone involved. Now, before we look at today's grammar point, let's look back at the vocabulary I gave you at the start. So the first word was awning. So what is an awning? Well, this is where the parachutist got trapped. So let's take a look at the context. Trouillet's parachute became caught in the stadium's awning, leaving him suspended around 30 meters above the ground. So the awning is the large, often retractable fabric structure which is designed to provide shade and protection from the elements, so sunshine or rain, for spectators and, of course, athletes. That's called the stadium awning. Okay, the next word is gather. Stadium staff, along with Toulouse's lion mascot, quickly gathered equipment. So to gather means to collect or to get things together. So they gathered equipment to cushion a potential fall. And that's the next key word, cushion. So what does that mean? They gathered equipment to cushion a potential fall. Well, to cushion means to soften the effect of an impact. To protect, basically. So to make the potential fall softer. Okay, the next word is cherry picker. Firefighters used a cherry picker to reach and safely rescue Trouillet. So a cherry picker is a machine, like a small crane, with a platform attached to the end on which a worker can stand and be lifted to reach high places. That's called a cherry picker. And of course, it was very, very useful to rescue the man. Okay, the next is the phrasal verb pick up with. We will pick up with Stade Toulousain and the stadium in due course. So to pick up with means to resume something. So we will resume the conversation. So basically they will talk about what happened and what went wrong. And in due course, so they will pick up with Stade Toulousain and the stadium in due course. In due course means at a suitable time. And those are the key words. Hopefully they are clear. Okay, let's move on to the next section of this episode. The grammar point that I mentioned earlier, prepositions of position. So I gave you a few examples, above, below, under. Did you hear me use any of those prepositions? Well, let's go through each one that I used. Let's start with in and on. So these are both prepositions of position. If you think about in and on, well, in means inside. So for example, I am in my living room. And on is used to speak about something which is attached to something horizontally or vertically. So let's take a look at the examples I gave you of in and on. So the first example, a parachutist became trapped on the stadium roof. So to be trapped on something compared with trapped in something, well, on is if you're physically attached to that thing. So of course this parachutist was physically attached to the top of the roof. If you're trapped in something, then you're inside. So for example, to be trapped inside a lift, elevator. Another example with on. He was unharmed and received a loud round of applause from the crowd once back on the ground. So again, to be on the ground, you are physically attached to the ground. And then we've got in. Trouillet's parachute became caught in the stadium's awning. So you can say to be caught on and to be caught in something. But there's a bit of a difference. So if you're caught in something, as we used in my example sentence, that basically means you're trapped inside it or entangled within something. So the parachute was entangled, was trapped within or inside the material or structure of the awning. So the parachute wasn't just hanging from it, but it was somehow tangled, wrapped up, stuck inside it. So other examples could be her hair got caught in the zip. It was trapped, it was stuck inside it. He was caught in the net, again, trapped inside it. The mouse got caught in a trap, quite literally inside of it. If it's caught on something, then it's not so much about being inside of something, but it's on the surface or edge of something. For example, the kite got caught on a tree branch, so it was caught on the outside of it and not inside of it. So that's the difference between to be caught in and to be caught on. Now let's look at 3 other prepositions of position: above, under, and below. So let's start with above. He was suspended around 30 meters above the crowd. So above means in an extended space over something, but there's no physical contact. So that's the meaning of above. And then we've got the word below. Fans sitting directly below the incident were moved. We'll talk about the meaning of below in just a moment. Let's first go on to under. Post projectors were placed under the trapped parachutist. So what's the difference between below and under? This is a question I get a lot, and there is a very subtle difference. So both are referring to the same position, but the purpose is a bit different. Under is used when something is providing cover, support, or is closely positioned to another thing, especially if it's functional or protective. So in my sentence, the post protectors were being used to literally protect the parachutist. So that's why we use under. Below is much more general, and it doesn't imply direct contact or functional relationship. So when we say that the fans were sitting directly below the incident, well, there's no functional relationship between the fans and the incident or the parachutist. Whereas the post protectors, there is a relationship between them and the trapped parachutist. Okay, we're now going to practice the difference between under and below with an exercise. I've got 5 sentences, all with a missing word, either under or below. Remember, under suggests there is some sort of relationship between the two things, and below is much more general. Okay, so number 1, the cat is hiding blank the table. Is it under or below the table? Number 2, there was a note stuck blank the chair, under or below the chair. Number 3, the submarine is currently located just blank the surface of the water, under or below the surface. Number 4, she put her shoes blank the bed before going to sleep. Is it under the bed or below the bed? And number 5, his name was listed blank mine on the register. Was it below mine or under mine? Okay, we'll take a look at the answers a bit later on in the episode. Let's now take a look together at 5 other examples of weird things which have delayed sports events. Let's start with something that happened at a cricket match in South Africa in 2017. A one-day international between South Africa and Sri Lanka was halted when a huge swarm of bees invaded the pitch. This is my worst nightmare, I think. Players lay flat on the ground to avoid being stung, and the game stopped for nearly an hour until a local beekeeper was called in. Wow, what a hero he must have been to everybody there. Next, something that happened to delay a baseball game in the United States in 2016. It was the sprinklers. That's to water the pitch. So during a Major League Baseball game between the New York Yankees and the Colorado Rockies, the automatic sprinklers suddenly switched on in the outfield, soaking the players and forcing an unexpected break. Let's just hope it was a hot day. Next, we have something that interrupted a football match in England. So in a Premier League match between Everton and Newcastle in 2022, a protester ran onto the pitch and chained himself to the goalpost using a cable tie around his neck. The game was paused while staff and police worked to remove him safely. Yes, there's been quite a lot of examples of protesters interrupting sports events lately. Next, something that happened at the Super Bowl in 2013. The biggest American football game of the year was delayed for 34 minutes after a power cut plunged part of the New Orleans Stadium into darkness. Of course, this incident sparked endless memes and conspiracy theories. And finally, a tennis match was interrupted in Miami. So during a match at the Miami Open, a large iguana climbed onto the scoreboard and then casually strolled across the court. Play was stopped while amused players and officials waited for the scaly visitor to be removed. Have you ever been at a sports event which was delayed for a weird reason? Okay. Before we listen to the news story again, let's take a look at the answers to the exercises I gave you earlier about below and under. So number 1, the cat is hiding blank the table. So what do you think? Was the cat hiding under or below the table? Well, the answer is under. The cat is hiding under the table. And that's because the table is being used by the cat to protect it from something. It's hiding there, so there is a direct relationship between the cat and the table, and therefore we use under. Number 2, there was a note stuck, something the chair. So is it under or below the chair? Well, it's under again. The note is stuck under the chair because it is directly attached to it. So there's clearly a relationship between the note and the chair. Number 3, the submarine is currently located just blank the surface of the water. Well, this time it's below. It's currently located just below the surface of the water. There's no relationship between the submarine and the surface of the water. The surface of the water isn't protecting the submarine or anything like that. It's just there. So we use the more general word, which is below. Okay, on to number 4. She put her shoes blank the bed before going to sleep. So, is it under or below? Well, it is under. She put her shoes under the bed before going to sleep. Yeah, so we use under because there is a direct relationship between the shoes and the bed. She obviously put them there for a particular purpose. And if there's a purpose, if there's a reason, then we use under. And number 5, his name was listed blank mine on the register. It should be below. His name was listed below mine on the register. There's no relationship or connection between his name and my name. It's just the position. Okay, let's listen to the news story one more time. Before we do that, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe if you haven't already, leave a review, and spread the word by recommending this podcast to anyone you think would find it helpful. And to support me and the podcast, consider joining the Learn English with Ben fan club, where you'll get lots of extra bonus content, including a full transcript of today's news story. Visit patreon.com/Learn English with Ben. Okay, let's see if you understand the news story a bit better the second time. I'll be back soon with another episode of Learn English with News. And here is, once again, today's news story. The start of the Champions Cup clash between Sale and Toulouse was delayed by 40 minutes after a parachutist became trapped on the stadium roof. Captain Yannick Trouillet was meant to deliver the match ball by parachuting into the Toulouse stadium. However, his descent didn't go as planned. Trouillet's parachute became caught in the stadium's awning, leaving him suspended around 30 metres above the crowd. As a safety precaution, fans sitting directly below the incident were moved. Stadium staff, along with Toulouse's lion mascot, quickly gathered equipment to cushion a potential fall. Post protectors were placed under the trapped parachutist, and a large inflatable children's rugby pitch was brought in to provide extra protection. After a tense 25-minute delay, firefighters used a cherry picker to reach and safely rescue Trouillet. Fortunately, he was unharmed and received a loud round of applause from the crowd once back on the ground. During the incident, the players returned to the dressing rooms. Once the situation was resolved, they came back out and the match finally kicked off. Despite the unusual start, Toulouse maintained focus and went on to secure a convincing 38-15 victory, booking their spot in the quarter-finals. Dominic Mackay, chairman of the European Professional Club Rugby, expressed his gratitude to everyone who helped with the rescue. He said, "We would like to extend our sincere thanks to all involved at the stadium, both clubs, and the emergency services for safely returning the parachutist to the ground." He also emphasised that the safety of both individuals and spectators is always the top priority, adding, "We will pick up with Stade Toulousain and the stadium in due course." And that's today's news story. Thanks again for listening to episode 3 of Learn English with News. If you haven't checked out episodes 1 and 2, then go back and listen to those. There's lots of interesting grammar connected with the past perfect tense and the present perfect tense. And if you're interested in taking some English classes online with me, then take a look at my website where you'll find all the details. The website address is learnenglishwithben.com.